Actually the first lecture in quite a while, Daniel, since COVID. So we have a more than special guest with us, and he is Daniel Assisi. He's an award-winning author and international speaker. He was featured in the documentary Togetherness video series, is a founding member of the Spiritist Institute, and the host of the Spiritist Conversation podcast, which I suggest you all check out. Very good one. Dr. Assisi, he is an executive coach and strategy consultant to various nonprofit organizations and holds a doctorate degree in education and a master's in public administration with a graduate certificate in public policy from the University of Southern California. That's a mouthful there. A very accomplished speaker, and as humble as accomplished, he lives with his wife and his two sons. Today he's going to be giving us a lecture on the topic of happiness. Without further ado, the floor is yours, Daniel. And I'll just say one quick thing here before I forget. Just want to thank everybody who helped plan this event, all the spiritual and physical volunteers, and the communications team, and the person of Joanna, who did a wonderful job with the flyer and the event. Thank you, Daniel.
Hi, everyone. It's great to see you guys. I'm very excited to be here with you and be able to see your faces there in in the new room. I see some balloons there in the back that brings tons of joy to me. And so I'm very excited about that piece in general. And I just want to make sure that you guys are all set there before we jump in. Yeah, everybody okay?
Yeah, we're all set, right?
All right.
Yep.
So, so much that I would love to share with you and talk about and just spend time with you. I'm celebrating with you your new place, and it's been a while since we were able to be together in person. I miss all of you, but I just want to say how excited I am for you that you get to spend time together in one physical space. I am very grateful for all the technology that we have, and that is absolutely wonderful in all different kinds of ways. But I'm just very excited about the possibility that you guys can enjoy each other's company. And in that spirit of happiness and in that spirit of togetherness, I thought that maybe, today's conversation could be around the miracle of happiness. And I think that is a very good conversation to be had because I think we can all use a little bit of happiness in our world nowadays, right? And so we are coming out from a pandemic, like you mentioned. We are trying to figure out our lives. We have so much going on about everything in the world. We have wars going on. We know, obviously, we have the Ukraine piece. We have the possibility of some conflict with Iran as well. We have economic downturn. We have homelessness. There's so much happening right now that it's easy for us to feel a little bit downtrodden, to feel a little bit just down and frustrated and unhappy and sad, to be honest with you. And all these feelings are okay. And we don't want to take away from any of that. But I think that there is a moment for us to recall happiness, and that happiness is possible even in these difficult moments. So for the next 6 hours and a half that we're going to spend together, I think I got you there. Some of you got worried when I said 6.5 hours. For the next couple of minutes that we're going to spend together, I hope that we are going to have a chance to just examine how happiness is an important factor of our lives and how we can see that, Jesus' first miracle was that of happiness. So it's a great place to start our search for spirituality, a search for self, and finding out a way of being in the world. And I hope that if I don't babble too much for too long, we are going to have a chance to interact as well and talk with each other and learn from each other about our perspectives on happiness. So thank you very, very much for having me. I'm really excited to be here with you. Um, but why this? Why the miracle of happiness? Why is it that we start with that? Well, I think it's very telling when I started to study the gospel, right? The words of Jesus Christ, that there is this interesting series of topics and things that happen, and they're called miracles, right? And they're very important points. And there's depends on how you catalog them and who you talk to, but in the four Gospels of the New Testament, which is the newer part of the Christian Bible, we have 27 books on the New Testament. Four of those are Gospels: Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John. And if you look through those, you're going to find there's approximately 38 different miracles that Jesus performs, right, that we know of. But you know which one is the first one? It's the miracle I call the miracle of happiness. And that's why I think it's so telling, because it's the miracle of the turning of the water into wine. And I think it's a fascinating story, and I wonder if it holds some symbolism for us in our day-to-day world, in our lives right now. I know that it's something that has happened, 2,000 years ago, but I think it can be very, very interesting. So I want to kind of go through that a little bit with you, and in doing that, I hope that we can kind of get some insights from that. So let's dive into that, right? All right, so here we go. The first miracle, turning the water into wine, also known sometimes as the miracle of Cana. And we see this in the Gospel of John, chapter 2, verses 1 through 11, if you want to go there and read it for yourself, which I highly suggest. That's the great thing about the New Testament. The stories are so powerful and they're very short. As you can tell, there are verses 1 to 11. They're just really 11 verses. And just for our own edification, I'm going to use the New International version of the translation of the Bible. There's so many different translations, but I find that it's very accessible. It's very easy to read. So if you're worried about language in the Bible, maybe that's a good translation piece for you to use. All right. This is the part that I'm going to do a little bit of reading. I'm going to put this on the screen to you so you can follow me, because I think we just have to have that context. We just have to read the story to understand what's going on, and we can talk a little bit about what the story is, but it's always great. So I'm going to ask for your indulgence. I'm going to flash the verses on the screen. We can read them together, and you can kind of follow along. And you might see some numbers close to the sentences. Those are the different verses on the Bible. So if you find something interesting and you want to go back to, right? All right, so here we go. Let's do this. The wedding at Cana. On the third day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." "Woman, why do you involve me?" Jesus replied. "My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Oh, let's flip here. And nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the jars with water." So they filled them to the brim, to the top. Then he told them, "Now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet." They did so, and the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. And the master of the banquet people is the person who was in charge of all the food in the wedding, which means he was the maître d', right? And he tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where he had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. Then he called the bridegroom aside and said, "Everyone brings out the choice wine, the best wine first, and then the cheaper wine later after the guests have had too much to drink. But you have saved the best till now." What Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed him. All right, so I think that you get the picture, right? So what's really happening here is there is a wedding taking place at the city of Cana in Galilee, and Jesus is invited there. His mother is also invited there, and some of his friends are also invited there. And I think one thing that's important for us to say is that weddings at that period of time, at that point in time, they were not just a couple of hours long. They were days long. There were celebrations of two families coming together. So on the third day, they had a wedding, right? So he's been there for a while and they've been celebrating. And the fact that his mother was involved and the fact that he was there means that these people were familiar to his mother and his family. At least they were neighbors or something, right? There was a connection there. And that happened. And then we know what happened. They were having fun. They were enjoying each other's company. And then something happens. They ran out of wine. And if they run out of wine, it means that the feast could not continue. It would be a little bit of a problem. But why is it that they're running out of wine? Well, did they not calculate correctly? They probably did. They probably did because it's a big planning. This is a couple of days long. They've been planning this for a while. I take it to mean, and this is just my interpretation, is that they invited more and more people and then they just ran out of wine. The atmosphere was so great. They were having fun. More people came. It was a joyous moment for them. And they were truly enjoying ourselves. And why do I say that? Because this miracle, to be honest with you, it's not about alcoholic beverages. It's not about drinks. It's about happiness, as we are making a case for, right? So I think it's important for us to understand that the atmosphere at that moment must have been truly special. Because if people were getting drunk, they were fighting, falling over tables, and creating problems, I think we can agree that this highly evolved spirit, Jesus, would not have prolonged the event. But the atmosphere was so nice, was so powerful that he considered wanting to continue that. At least his mother did. Mary really wanted to, right? And so she makes a point for that. So, but that's kind of my case. Which I think what I want to start with is telling you exactly that Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples has also been invited to the wedding. So this was a familiar place. This was a moment of fun, of joy, of coming together, of celebration, not unlike the one that you're going through in this very moment in that very room, where you are coming together to celebrate a larger spiritual moment, a larger family, a spiritual family of sorts, meeting, enjoying each other's company. And instead of wine, we have maybe some food going on, and maybe if we didn't have any food, maybe people wouldn't linger that much. But what I think is really great about this is that this is about being with people. This miracle is about enjoying people. And so that's how this first miracle that Jesus does really focuses on. And what else? What else could we say there? Well, I think there's more to that, right? Because once we start looking into things, we see that Jesus' mother said to him, they have no more wine. And she has realized at this point in time, and she's enjoying everything and realizing that people no longer have something to drink or something to connect over. She gets worried. And she understands that there's going to be a disconnection. There's going to be a stop in what they're doing. Maybe because there's no more wine and no more food, people will slowly make their way home and go somewhere else. So she is worried that that joyous moment is going to be interrupted. And she does not want that, right? And so in many different ways, what Mary is asking for is for the miracle of continuity. She wants to keep that going, which is not different from us when we are with our friends enjoying a great meal or enjoying a good time together. Sometimes we don't want that to end. We're having such a good time and we haven't seen people in a while. Does that resonate with you? And then we just want to stay there in that moment. We just want to enjoy it because life is rough. And so she's asking for the miracle of continuity. Can we continue to be in this joy? Can we continue to be here and not worry about anything else? Can we just be present and bask in this beautiful moment where we're coming together, people are meeting each other, people are connecting, we're connecting families, and a wedding, very symbolic, very beautiful. She's asking for continuity. So I think that's the second aspect that I want to bring to you as we continue to think about this. And what else? What else might be interesting to say? Well, let's kind of follow the story along and see what else comes. There's tons of things that we can think about in the story and that we could potentially really consider. But because our time is short and these stories are so powerful, full of symbolism, we're going to go along and we can always kind of come back to them if we want to. Here's an interesting part of the story that I like. She goes to him and says, "They have no more wine." And that really means what? Like, do something about this, right? Hey, Jesus, you over there, my son, they're going to run out of wine. Clearly, Mary knows that Jesus at this point in time is a little special in the sense that he can do things. And she's asking him, like, you figure something out. And he turns to her and says, "Woman, why do you involve me?" He says, right? And she doesn't take a no for an answer. She says, "Do whatever." She turns to the servants who are helping serve the food in that place and she says, "Do whatever he tells you." Basically, she's telling Jesus, she's so courageous. I love this. She's telling him indirectly saying, "No, no, 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 you're going to do something about this. This has to go." She is persisting, right? So this is the miracle of persistence. And this is what I love about Mary so much because she doesn't take a no for an answer. And Jesus is clearly telling, "Why do you involve me? Like, why are you calling me into this? This is not yet my time. I have not yet planned to start doing miracles at this point in time. I have not yet really the desire to get involved and let people know what's going on." But she does not take a no for an answer. And I think that has a lot to do with us too, because in many different ways, our lives, the miracle that we are, and the group that you guys symbolize and are together is a miracle of persistence. We were just talking beforehand how the pandemic came and made it very difficult for us to meet in person and to be together, and yet you persisted. You stuck together. You did Zoom meetings. You study on your own. And you kept that bond and that connection going because you know that was important to you somehow. And so happiness also requires persistence. And I like that we get to see this and we get to ponder about this and not just think that happiness is something that happens without us doing anything, that it just popped into our laps. And I think that we can see that that might not be the case, right? That we actually need to put some effort into it and to make sure that we get to a place where we're happy. But that's not the only thing. There's more. And I know that I'm going a little bit fast through this, but I just want to sprinkle some things in there so that we can have a sense of what's going on and have our own interpretation of things. So the question then becomes, we all know what's going to happen at this point in time. Jesus is going to transform water into wine. And it could be as simple as that, right? We can interpret that story as simple as that. That's something that doesn't happen every day, obviously. That's why we stuck with it. But there's more to it. So let's think a little bit about how that happens and what kind of symbolism we can get out of that. So let's do that. All right. So nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing. And here's where we need a little bit of content, right? These jars, they are not small jars. They're not tiny. They are big jars. They are from 20 to 30 gallons. It's a lot of water, right? For those of you who prefer the metric system, that's about 100 liters. It's a lot of fluid, a lot of water. And the Jews and the Jewish community kept those around for ceremonial washing. Why? Because within the Jewish community, not to dive too much, there was different degrees of cleanliness, and it's not just hygiene from the body, but spiritual cleanliness, and that is a little bit different than what we're used to today. But according to tradition, and we could go into that some other time, for you to be able to go into the temple to connect with God, you had to be spiritually clean, which means you should avoid sex, being close to somebody who died, childbirth, some well, not kosher food. There was a series of things that required you to kind of get your vibration level, so to speak, according to the traditions up by washing and doing your ablutions, your cleaning with the ceremonial water. So they had a lot of water. So we're talking about 6 stone water jars. That is really big. You're talking about almost 200 gallons of water. And so that means, in many different ways, that this is a miracle of inner transformation. Because think here with me. These water jars held the water for you to clean yourself physically, to symbolize a spiritual readiness. And what Jesus is going to do is he's going to use that water, he's going to transform that water into wine. But instead of cleansing just ourselves, that water is going to be drank. It's going to go inside of us. And so I think the beautiful symbolism of the moment is that transformation is not just an hourly transformation, that this miracle is not about putting wine in people's table so that they can drink and be a little bit, schnockered and feel good about themselves. It's about inner transformation. It's about inner feeling and the happiness that comes from truly enjoying the moment. It's not just for us numbing our senses and not remembering what happened later. It's about joy. It's about um, really changing the perspective and how we feel about things. And I think that is a beautiful symbolism of how Jesus can come in and take something that is physical of the world and invite us to go deeper spiritually and address it in our own selves in the kindest and most incisive way, reminding us that there's more than the physical and that we can go deeper and really understand that the level of happiness we seek is not going to come from the outside world. It's going to come from bringing all this joy, right? This life into ourselves. And I think that's really interesting for us to think about this in general, because wine is also a symbol of life. It's also a symbol of wisdom, and we can talk a little bit about that later. But the idea here is it takes time for regular wine to mature. You get the grapes, you crush them, you let them ferment, you wait, and then you have wine. So it's a long process of wisdom. So what I think we are here in symbolism talking about is that Jesus is offering the transition of water, which is something basic and wonderful, into something that is aged, which brings a lot of wisdom and experience. And he's inviting us to take that into ourselves, to transform our own personal experiences into something that, it's wise at the end of the day. It's taken time and effort to process that. All right, so I just cut myself talking for a while there, but I think you got the point. There is an aspect of this that really begs the question of why did he use those water jars? And I think another interesting piece too is why doesn't he just do it himself? Couldn't he just like snap the fingers and just collected the water and put it in the jars or make it appear on people's table? I mean, he just transformed water into wine, so clearly he's capable of doing other things. But yet he says to the servants, fill the jars with water. So they fill them all the way to the brim. And I think that's really great because that's the miracle of contribution. He could have done all of this by himself. He could have transformed the water into wine and have the jars filled with water by himself. But yet, he asked the servants to fill the jars with water. And I think it's a really beautiful part of this little parable, because he is telling us that we can't contribute to the work, because it is contributing to the work. It's doing some of our work that we learn and we gain the credit, so to speak, the experience to make sense of it all. So he was inviting the servants, which in many different ways could be all of us, to do our part. And that always reminds me of the beautiful question 132 in the Spirit's book that I call the evolution and contribution question, because it sort of narrows the purpose of reincarnation into just one simple question, right? In question 132, Allan Kardec asked the spirits, what is the purpose of us incarnating? And they answer, to evolve, that we go through these experiences, we learn, and we then become wiser, and that's why we're here for evolution. And I think that's a powerful question in itself. The fact that we already have that answer and have that clarity, it's amazing because I think that many people go through life without knowing what they're here to do. And I think that we all have a sense as we begin to study Spiritism that we are here to evolve, to learn different things. Exactly what we are going to learn and how we are going to do that learning, it's up to you and me, to each one of us individually. And so that part we have to figure it out, but we know that we're here to grow. And I think that's a really beautiful perspective. But what I really like about that question, and that I didn't notice at first, is that it continues. It has another part to it, like a part two to it. And then the good spirits tell us, and in doing so, for spirits to play their part in the creation. That is to say, as we grow and evolve, we're not just here for ourselves. We're not just here to take things in and make ourselves happy. Yes, that is also the reason why we're here. That's why we come and reincarnate as many times as we need to. But as we do that, we have a responsibility to each other and to creation. To play our part in the creation means we are having to contribute to others and to others' experiences. And that is no surprise because if you think about this, many people have made a difference in your life by their presence. And you, in turn, also make a difference in people's lives by being present. Your family, your friends, people here in the group, and in different things you do. So I call that the evolution and contribution question because it's really about evolution and contribution. That's what we're here for. That's the meaning of life in many different ways. And so what I see here is a parallel. And Jesus is saying, I could do all these things, much the same way that we know our spirit friends could do wonderful things by themselves. But they oftentimes ask us to take a part. They give us a role so that we begin to learn how to do things. And so servants here are invited to be part of the solution. They're not just going to watch and bystand. They're going to feel connected to it. They're going to feel part. And I think if happiness is not that too, even when we don't know how to bring about happiness as a whole, we shouldn't just sit there and wait for it to happen. We need to work and persist, but also actively work towards it. We need to find ways of contributing, and by doing things and by helping others or by lending a hand to something that we think is worthwhile might be the recipe for our happiness to start to emerge. So the question that I ask myself is, what kind of contribution am I doing when I'm feeling a little down? Is there something that I could do to get my hands dirty, so to speak? How can I help fill the jars with water for this transformation, for this happiness, even if I don't know how that's going to take place yet? How do I move myself and get it going, even if I don't know what the end result is? How do I start working towards that change that I want to see in the world? And I think that's a beautiful thing. And for you guys, I think it's such a beautiful moment because here you are. Maybe you don't know what's going to happen next with your group or with your lives, but you are there gathering in that room that it takes money to rent and people to staff and volunteers to clean, and all those things are you filling the jars with water. It's you doing your contribution, small that it may be, so that people can drink from the wine that you're creating together. And I think that's a really touching and beautiful thing that sometimes we don't realize that's happening. But I am talking a lot. But so let's kind of look a little bit more about what else happens here and what we can learn from this tiny little story. All right, so the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where he had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. And the master of the banquet is the person who is in charge of the feast. He's the maître d' in today's terms. When you go to a restaurant, he's the boss of the waiters. And the water was taken to him, and he tasted it and saw that, the wine that used to be water was taken to him, and he tasted it. And he did not know where it came from because, again, Jesus is consistent, right? So he has somebody else take it, say, now take it to the maître d' so he can do it, because they know he also knows that nothing's going to be served unless the maître d' approves, right? There's a quality control piece going on there. And so he does not know where the wine is coming from. He tasted it and it feels good, right? And I think that the telling part about this is also about selflessness. This is about moving your energies in doing things and doing the work that we talked about for other people and for yourself necessarily sometimes without asking for recognition. So Jesus was sending a beautiful message here that many times the actions that we do that may uplift ourselves and uplift other people may come by way of anonymity, that we may not be ever recognized for it in many different ways when we do some community work. People that benefit from us cleaning schools or painting shelters or giving food to other peoples or dropping meals in different places, they may not know where it came from. They may not know your name or my name, but they're still benefiting from it. And that's a beautiful thing when you have people doing things to help others without necessarily seeking recognition. That's just a powerful thing. And sometimes happiness is like that. Whatever it is that we are going to do may not come back to us in terms of recognition, but that's okay because there's a lot of other things that are done to us as well that we don't realize that also come to us by way of anonymity. We don't know who has ever done them. Maybe you've got a scholarship to go to college, but somebody that you never knew about, but somebody had to approve that. Somebody had to donate that money. Maybe you came into this group today and you had a wonderful coffee and you didn't realize that somebody bought that. Somebody, brought it to the group and kept it fresh and made it, and you don't know who did it. And so it's a beautiful thing for us to come into sense of how much it's done to us and for us without us necessarily knowing who did it. And so there's a component of selflessness there in that happiness that's important for us to pay attention to and dial into. And what else? What else can we talk about this wonderful story? Well, there's also this great part here that I like. I think that we can resonate with. And the master of the banquet is telling to the people who brought him. Oh, he goes to the groom, right? Because the groom is supposed to pay for the party and make everything happen in terms financially. He turns to the groom and says, "Wow, everyone generally brings out the choice wine first, the best wine first, and then the cheaper after the guests have too much to drink. But you have saved the best till now." And I think that you can relate to this, right? In regular parties, in the regular world, you serve the good stuff first because people can still taste it and enjoy it, and they're still in full control of their senses, right? In regular world parties, the more wine you drink, the less likely are you to pay attention to the wine and the quality of the wine because you already had some alcohol in you and you're just drinking and you're not really thinking about things. And what the Maitre D here is saying is that this is the opposite. He's very surprised because this bucks convention. He saved the best for last. And that is very different. And I think that is profoundly meaningful because what Jesus is telling us here is that the wine that he is serving, the wisdom that he is bringing to us, this different perspective of looking at life and life after life, life immortal, is very different than anything that we have understood before. And that changes our perception, right? Because what he brings to us is the miracle of long-term thinking. When we begin to think of ourselves spiritually, what happens is we change our perceptions in many different ways. And what do I mean by that? We begin to think of ourselves as an immortal spirit that is experiencing one lifetime right now and has experienced many other lifetimes before and will experience many other lifetimes in the future. So, what you are is not just these years that you have lived and will live in this lifetime. You are way more than that. And when you know that, you begin to make decisions that perhaps are a little bit different than you would otherwise have made if you didn't have that knowledge. One way of thinking about that, because sometimes it's so difficult for us to think about how spiritual knowledge changes us, is consider your life. You have lived many days. But if you woke up every day and thought that was your last and only day, you might make choices that are different than you knowing that you have many more years ahead of you. You might take for that particular day and indulge in everything you can just for the here and now because you know that you will not have it tomorrow. You might just go out, get drunk, and do all kinds of crazy things because you think that there's nothing else. But once you know that is not the fact, that in fact you are going to grow, evolve, and meet people, have families, you make different decisions. You make different choices about what is important to you. Maybe going out today and getting drunk is not high on your priority list anymore because you know that tomorrow you're going to wake up and you might want to avoid that headache and that hangover. So that spiritual knowledge changes us. And that's what Jesus thinks brings to us, because I think that he is the first and most powerful case for the fact that we are shown that after this physical body dies, for whatever the cause, we are going to resurrect. That is to say, we are going to become spiritual beings again, like we were. We're going to go back to that plane of existence, and we are not dead. We're not done, and then we come back and do things again and continue our uh, long path towards evolution. So this wine that he's serving is different. It is better than the one we have in this world. That is to say, this knowledge that he brings, this certainty, this wisdom, reminds us that everything that we have and we have done and we learned continues to go on after this, and that brings us a lot of joy, or should bring us a lot of joy, because all the relationships and all the work that you have done doesn't go away. As a matter of fact, if you think about this, the more we fall into the spiritual perspective that Jesus has brought us, and now Spiritism help us remind ourselves of through reincarnation and mediumship and so forth, we begin to understand that the relationships that we are making and that we have made continue with us. When the people that you love in this life pass away, do you stop loving them? No, you don't. But why is it that sometimes we forget that they have not stopped loving us either? And if that's the case, then they are in the spiritual plane loving us tremendously at this very point in time. And that brings an incredible amount of joy to our hearts. That kind of wine is way tastier and way better than the wine that the physical world offers us. As a matter of fact, when we begin to think about it that way, we begin to realize that those relationships that we have, they're going to be there forever. And something even more beautiful and more abundant comes through as well. And these are just the relationships that we have made in this life. Because we're here right now and don't remember all our spiritual past, we forget that we have had mothers, fathers, cousins, partners, sisters, brothers, friends in many other lifetimes before. And they have not stopped loving us, even if we don't remember them right now because we are in the middle of this incarnation. So if you were to do the math from a spiritual perspective, you have hundreds of spiritual friends who love you deeply and are supporting you and rooting for you, even if you don't remember them right now. And that is really reassuring and really touching in many different ways, because it vanquishes this idea that we are alone and that nobody cares for us. That is just an illusion, because they are in the spiritual world or maybe incarnated close to us, sending us love every single moment, thinking about us because they love us, much the same way that we love them. And that is a much better wine to drink of than the wine of everyday life. So if you forget for in that moment about everything that you are spiritually, it's easier for you to get trapped in a world that is full of wars, full of doubt, full of pain, full of trouble, full of challenges. But when you shift your thinking to a long-term perspective, the way Jesus came to talk to us about happiness becomes very different. Happiness becomes even more powerful. And you can see how you could have that happiness even in the middle of all this craziness that's going out there. Because the moment does not define you forever. It's just that moment that you're in. And if you bring that love and that certainty of the things that you know are there already, then you can be happy even in the middle of a war, even in the middle of financial challenges, even in the middle of relationship trouble, even in the middle of health issues, because you're beginning to see the long term and you know that this is just a challenge that you're facing and that you are going to overcome it because there's so much support for you and you are on your path to love and learning, evolution, and contribution. And that's a really powerful thing. Okay, Dan. So you were talking about all this stuff, and that's very figurative. That's very nice. But how does that connect to our world other than through symbolism? Is there something else that we can add here? I said, well, let's talk a little bit about what science also knows about the way that we interact with the world and how our bodies operate. And I want to talk to you a little bit about the science of stress. And by that, I mean that I'm not a medical doctor, I should tell you. But what I do learn and have been interested in, which I think is fascinating in many different ways, is that when we are under stress, something interesting happens to our body. Our body produces a substance called cortisol. And what cortisol does is it enhances the brain's use of glucose. So it gives us lots of energy all of a sudden. And that is so that we can do two things. We can have this extra energy to repair a damage to our bodies. If something like, if we were in a fight, if we are having to run from a tiger, and we got hurt, it's going to help us heal faster. But to do that, right, it actually sacrifices a little bit other parts of our brain that are important to us, like long-term thinking and ability to see different options. Because what it's going to do is it's going to turbocharge us so we can deal with the crisis at hand. And this is something that physically is an inheritance of our past, our animal evolution, right? When we were faced with a challenge, a physical challenge where we had to fight or run away, we needed that extra energy. Our body would provide that to us. And in that moment, when you are in that stress, that trauma zone, all you're going to see is the tiger that is walking and attacking you. You're not going to stop to think about the flowers that are right beside you, how beautiful they are. You're not going to think about the perfume that come from them or how beautiful the sunset. In that moment of time, all of that goes away. And all you can see is the challenge and the stress that's in front of you because that's what you need to deal with to physically survive. So when we are in those fight, freeze, or flight situations, we are getting our system overloaded with cortisol, with glucose in our brain, so that we can either heal faster or run faster or fight better, right? And while that's very helpful and it has helped us keep ourselves alive over many different incarnations and preserve ourselves because it's important that we are alive to have these experiences, it's no longer sitting well with us because now in our day-to-day life where we're no longer being chased by a real tiger, we are dealing with emotional circumstances, complex circumstances, and those processes are still happening, which means if we stay there too long, then all we are going to do in the middle of that stress is to focus on what's not working, on what's not going wrong. And that is a problem. And I think many of us sometimes fall prey to this modern version of the tiger, where we are seeing the wars on TV, all these bad news, and these things come in and kick into our brains and our system. And we focus only on that, and we have trouble seeing anything else other than the challenge that are in front of us. I think we all have those moments, and that's very okay. We're not judging, we're not pointing fingers. That's part of who we are, something we have to deal with and learn how to deal with. So if something is happening to you that's traumatic, it's difficult, it's possible that you're focusing on that all the time because you want to solve that or you want to run away from that. And that's very valid. And you should solve it and you will solve it because I believe that God, all kind and just, would only give us situations for us to handle that we can handle, right? Otherwise, it would be a mean God. It might be that the solution to that situation is not the one we want, but there will be one. And so the question is, how do we find that out? How can we work what we know to find that? And the answer is simple. We have to take a step back, de-stress, release some of that cortisol out of our system so that we can begin to think clearly and see that we shouldn't just focus on the fear in front of us, on the anxiety in front of us, and the stress in front of us, that we should take some moment to think about what kind of options do we have? What else could we do? Who else could we call into this challenge that can help us? And when we take that step back, when we're able to think about things in that way, it becomes easier to tackle that problem. And that's why I think that prayer meditation is great. And that's why I love Spiritism, because it helps me zoom out for this current moment to understand my condition as a spirit going through many lifetimes that who has been put here to face specific challenges so I can grow. So the family trouble that sometimes I encounter, because no family is perfect, right? I take a step back and say, all right, as an immortal spirit who has been here many times and has had many families before, I'm sure I can navigate this. How can I think about this from a spiritual perspective? What kind of efforts should I do to work on my family relations in a way that even if they're not perfect, maybe they can be convivial, that we can live with each other, enjoy each other, or at least not step on each other's toes all the time? How can I work on that? Because I know that if I don't figure this one out now, I might have to come back here next lives with those same people and work on difficult situations then. So let me tackle that now, right? And if I am also, having to deal with other challenges, I know that they're in a similar fashion are going to be solved. And Spiritism does that to me in my perspective. It changes the way I face life because now I'm constantly reminding myself, or at least trying, that I am an immortal spirit who is in a physical body. And I'm not a physical body who eventually is going to have a spirit after I die. It's the opposite. I've been, you know, programmed to think that way, but I am deprogramming myself by having conversations such as this one, by attending spiritist meetings and reinforcing to myself and engaging in mediumistic work that also tells me that there's more than meets the eye and all these things that we learn through spiritism that really point me to the fact that I can take a step back and not be the victim of stress of the moment. And let's be honest, there's a lot of stress right now, right? There is absolutely a lot of stress in the world right now in many different ways. We're pulled in different directions. As a matter of fact, many times people want to stress us out so that we focus on specific things that they want us to focus on. It's a way of controlling us in different ways. I know controlling is a big word, but at least leading us to certain actions and decisions, which we don't have to take. We don't have to fall into this desperation, into distress. It's okay that we feel down. It's okay that we feel stressed. That's normal. But we don't have to stay on it for very long, or at least too long. And now that we have this perspective, the question really begins, what is it that we are going to do? Because you have your own 2 feet and you have free will that you have also learned about. So you can make different choices. And that's all up to you. And the question really is, what will you do from here on? And that is in many different ways. The invitation that lingers to us is how are we going to address this invitation that has been whispered by Jesus for more than 2,000 years now, where we are being invited to that banquet, to that moment of joy. And I think there are a couple of things that we can remind ourselves here. The happiness comes from being with people and people that we care about and building those relationships. It is unlikely that we are going to be happy in the long term just with things. Of course, buying a new house, buying a new car is a wonderful, buying things makes us happy, but it's not going to make us happy forever because these things go away. But the relationships we build and the things we do and leave as a contribution to the world, that's something else. That's really powerful. And so being with people is an important part of our happiness and bringing continuity to it, making sure that the joy keeps flowing and that it continues so that we can enjoy it now, others can enjoy it now and later. And maybe when we come back, we can enjoy it later again, is very important. So there is a continuity to joy that is okay for us to tap into it and know that joy can be a constant in our lives. That wedding party at Cana can be a symbol to our own spiritual happiness, of joy, of coming together with people we love and staying connected in that marriage, not a temporary thing, but this covenant, this bond that we form with other people, not in a romantic marriage, but a spiritual marriage, when once we commit to each other and we know that we're going to be in each other's lives, is also a really important component of happiness. And as we go back to our story, we also learned with Mary the importance of persisting, that being happy means insisting on doing the work and asking for help and finding ways to continue to have the joy go. It just doesn't happen all of a sudden. You work towards it. You work towards being happy. You put in the time and the effort, and it pays off. And that's about transforming ourselves, just like the stone jars tell us about. It's not about waiting for something outside of us to change us and we're going to be happy, right? Just drinking the wine is not going to be happy. It's important for us to bring it inside of ourselves and choose to transform the way we act, the way we think, and the way we are. But when we do, it pays off because once we change, then we can't unchange. Once we see the world differently, the world becomes different, and we can see the happiness even in moments of pain and anger and frustration that we all go through. We can recognize that. We can see and know that the sun is there even if there are clouds in front of it. And this story also tells us that we have something to contribute. That even if we don't know where to start with happiness, we can fill the waters, the jars with water, and trust that life, that Jesus, that spirituality will transform them into wine later. But that will not be possible if we don't do our part. Spirituality, God, Jesus, whatever deity do you want to consider, it's asking us for us to act in the world and do our part to evolve, to help others, to learn, because we learn by doing. So let's contribute to the happiness that we want to see by doing something, even if we don't know how we're going to get to the end goal. Do something that leads you in that direction and see what unfolds. And that's a powerful thing. And don't worry about getting recognition. Happiness does not come from recognition. It comes from acting selflessness, for not thinking about how you're going to get credit, but just doing something that is good. I know that sometimes that's really hard, and that's okay if we are seeking recognition in the beginning. That's very okay. We learn by doing, right? We change, and it's better for you to do something nice and still want credit than not do it at all, right? I think you agree with me on that. But it will be even better and even more powerful when we can do things without necessarily asking for recognition. And the last thing, which I think is the greatest miracle that Spiritism brings us, is the miracle of long-term thinking, is to transform our perspective and help us understand that really we are here as immortal spirits. And in that sense, what we really want to do is come into the realization that we are never going to go away, that everything that we are and who we are and how we are continues to be after we leave this physical body. And that is really great news because all that you're working for is not going to go away. You are not going to be judged forever based on actions of one life. You are going to take responsibility for the things that didn't go so well. You're going to work on them. And you're going to have the joy of having done some things well that you're also going to take with us as we depart this physical body. And we're also going to take the relationships and the support that we get from each other and know that we are never going to be alone no matter where we go. So today, as you celebrate this wonderful moment of coming together in your new physical place, that could be a symbol of this joining spiritually and emotionally that you're doing. Take the moment to look around in this room that you're in and the things that you have come together. You have chairs, you have a screen, you have air conditioning, you have windows, you have so many things that you're working towards. And that's only possible because all of you are working towards that. And what a wonderful thing to consider that that space could be a space in which you grow by the different study groups, the different reflections that you can do, achieve some personal healing so that you can transform yourself and feel better, not only physically, but emotionally and spiritually about the path that you're taking. And also know that this place could symbolize your wedding at Cana. It could be the place that you come to where you know that people are going to be friendly. They're going to be wanting to help you. They want to connect, even if the world outside those doors continues to challenge you. So there's much to celebrate today. And I hope that Jesus' story about the turning the water into wine really settles into you as the miracle of happiness. The first thing he did as he began to unveil to us his greatness was to show us that happiness can be achieved and it's possible for us to do that. And so let's lead with happiness. Let's work on building that happiness with us inside of us. And hopefully we're going to be able to be happy in a very short period of time and contribute to others' happiness as well. That's my wish to you. Congratulations on your new place, on your new room. And I will stop talking now because I realize I've talked for a while, but I'm really happy for you and to be here with you at a distance.
Great, thank you, Daniel, for these wonderful words. And we're very excited that you took the time. And I should say that people, more than a few, love your approach, including my wife. She loves the way you teach as an educator. You know, it really felt like a conversation, and I love how you brought it all together in terms of our new place. Uh, we're running. We're not going to do the fast today. We're just going to do a spiritual class. So we're going to play together. But I do, if they are probably on the spot, you're okay with just open up for just a couple of questions. You know, more than 10 minutes. If folks want to interact with you, if that's okay with you.
I love it. Let's do it. This is what we're here for, right?
It's not like you really have a choice there. All right, any reactions, guys? And then you can see there's a very approachable questions, comments, you know, thanks. You guys want to say something?
I would say I really love that idea of that's the way of looking at attention and your my better years are behind me. No, that's true. The best, you know, that's one you're I really value that and taking that away to
Thank you. Sorry. And Pablo, would it be possible for you to repeat that a little bit? I think the microphone is cutting off. I don't know if other folks are online are also hearing that.
Yeah, it's I didn't understand any of it. It's very garbled. Sorry, Beth.
Oh, you hear me? I think
We can hear you, but the microphone seems to be like crackling when you speak, so we can't hear the beginning and the end of your talk. And it's not just you, I think it's in general, so we apologize for that. We really want to hear you. Maybe we can have somebody repeat into the microphone or get closer to the microphone.
Go ahead and repeat. So, Beth, one of our volunteers here, thank you for the lecture. Says she loves the idea that the best is yet to come, the best wine is reserved, this long-term thinking, and also that she loves your podcast. So she's a huge fan, one of many over here.
Oh, you make me blush. Thank you. I'm really excited that you like that. But, you know, I love that idea of the long-term thinking too, because at the end of the day, that's, I think, what the message that Jesus came to bring to us is there's so much more that we have not yet realized, right? And when he makes that promise to us, like everything that I do, you too will be able to do, like you are gods, right? Like in that sense, it really points to the potential that we have to grow and to help others. And that means that the more we grow, the happier we're going to be. So, can you imagine all of us a couple of lifetimes from now, how much better we're going to feel about everything else? So, I'm really positive about that prospect, even though things are very hard right now, right? Let's be honest, things are a little bit rough right now out there, right? But it's also really beautiful because it says that we have agency, that we can bring about change in the world through our actions. Whatever it is that we do, we're here to collaborate and improve this world too. That's pretty big flattery, I think. Pretty cool.
And then I just say, give us a lecture and we're sure like explaining this talk and making down this each this deeper dive on the meaning. It really resonated with me, the fact of selflessness. When Jesus acknowledges was not his time to come out to everyone on laws, yet to help, and yet was it to provide happiness for that group that was there through others, right? He didn't do it himself, showing up he was the one hero, but also, but instead, acting through, the wish's mother and the help of those who were there serving. That is, in many ways, how we hope that service that we do will be done in the future, right? Without the need of recognition.
Yeah, and
Then you still hear us? So this was just,
Yeah.
Thanking you for.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I heard Lino. Hi, Lino. I see you at the corner of the screen there. I see your arm. I think you're on the left side. There you go. I see you looking at the computer. Think now. Good to see you, buddy. And yes, the selflessness piece is wonderful. And it's going to be so wonderful when things miraculously happen, right? We're not there just yet. I think that we still need a lot of the recognition, and that's okay because sometimes recognition is motivating, but we're certainly working towards the not needing motivation. But I still talk to people sometimes who tell me that they feel pretty bad because they do things only because they want to be recognized, and they have like a little bit of a challenge with that. And I'm like, well, what would you rather do? Would you rather not do something good, right? Because you feel like you can only do something good when you're doing it selflessness, right? Or would you rather like at least work on it and fake it till you make it, right? Do something, even if you're seeking recognition right now, do something that help others. And with time, we are going to get to a place where that recognition, it's not as important. And we are going to feel happy with just doing the things that we know are right. And that's really powerful and really beautiful. And in many different ways, a Spiritist group, a Spiritist society teaches that, right? Because think about this. No one receives payment as Spirit Society, right? Nobody gets a salary out of this. Being a Spiritist is expensive, right? You take time out of your day, right, to do all these volunteer things. You donate because you need to get a room figured out, you need to work, and nobody ever gets recognized for that. And then people complain about things not working, but you're still happy about it. So hey, at least we are on the way to learning how to be more selfless, right? Because the Spiritist society teaches a little bit of how to do that. Are you still there with me?
Awesome, Daniel. Thank you so much. Yes. The transmission is a little choppy, but we kind of heard some of your comments. And again, thank you so much for all of what you said. Do you want to just say any final words in terms of your podcast? Any resource that you want us to know or folks to connect to you? Anything along those lines?
Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you. I really appreciate Beth and talking about Spiritist Conversations. The podcast is making a comeback this year. If you don't already subscribe on whatever podcast platform you like or YouTube, please do so. We would love to hear from you. We love your suggestions. I also want to share with you something that we're trying to do. It's called the Spiritist Radar. It's a monthly publication, an email that goes out with news about Spiritism in English for those of us who like to have the news in English. There's also a WhatsApp group that you get some broadcasts with what's happening around the world in English. So if you're interested, just go to the spiritistinstitute.org and sign up for the Spiritist Radar or hit me up on social media. I can point you there. And lastly, I just want to tell you that you are one of the greatest gifts to Spiritism. And I say that because when I first start studying Spiritism, I was really taken by the change of perspective that Spiritism offered me. And that was an incredible gift, and has changed my life in many different ways and how I see the world. But the second gift that I never expected was that I would get to meet so many wonderful people all across the world. They're trying to do the same thing that I'm doing, which is to be a little bit better today than I was yesterday, and how many friendships came from that. So as I look into your room right now, I see so many familiar faces. I see voices. I hear voices, right? I also saw, like, I have Celino Se Pablo. I see all of you guys. I can't name everybody, but I also see online. I just saw Don online too, who I hadn't seen for a while. I'm really glad to see him, and I look forward to, now that you have a new space, to visit you in the future. I'm going to try to find a reason to make my way through Chicago and my work life, and maybe I will drop in one of these days and be part of your community in person.
Nice. Daniel, can you just write the name of the website there? I'm just asking.
Sorry, you cut off at the last part. I didn't
I
get
know
that.
some lines, so I just want to be mindful of your, attempt there. When you an attempt again, I that was or having the next one. Just put the website of the Spirit Institute chat, please. Then was I trying to ask a question on your line before we wrap up?
Ooh, sorry, it's hard to hear you guys. I think you're froze.
Take that as a no. And then
Sorry, I
like
couldn't.
the website.
Yeah, I could. Sorry, I couldn't hear you. You were breaking up. I can't hear you very well.
There you go. Perfect. So Jago, he has the name of the website there. That's fine. Yeah, we're all set. Any what's the final prayer? Thanks again, Daniel, for your words, for being with us.
It's a pleasure being with you. Thanks for having me.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and do close right here. Okay.
Ooh.
So, yes. No, thank you again. So, gratitude, that's where here or from the comfort of our homes, kind of relax into our chairs, take a deep breath, and take stock of the many blessings we are gifted with in this lifetime, including this doctrine that educates us and frees us from ourselves. We would like to elevate our thoughts from both planes of life to you, Christ, divine friend and companion of all hours, and ask that you too perform the works of joy inside the cup of our hearts that sometimes are filled with bitterness, with resentment, with disillusionment and despair. We ask that you touch each of our lives through the hands of our spiritual friends, our spirit mentors, also the words of our guest speakers, like the one today, so that we may feel your presence illuminating us through the darkness of our struggles, and that we may feel this transformation with the spark of the divine flame of hope in better days. Beyond to keep moving forward towards those whose tears are more abundant and whose needs are greater than ours. Bless this humble place that we call our spiritual home, all of the workers and members from both planes of life that are currently working, but also that have passed through and left their indelible marks of contribution, so that we may together learn, but individually evolve towards a better version of ourselves. Bless each of our lives, our homes, our speaker Daniel Assisi, his work, his spiritual home as well, his family, and stay with us. And so, all right, my friend. Thanks again, Daniel. We'll see you soon.
Thank you very much, Dan, for being with us. Great lecture.
Thank you and congratulations. See you soon.